The city smells different at 3 in the morning. Not cleaner, just quieter. Like the grime takes a breath before the next day begins. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall of the abandoned railway station, listening. Always listening. Out here sounds meant survival. The hum of electrical wires overhead. The rustle of rats in the trash bins. The distant wail of sirens that never came close enough to this part of town to matter. Tonight felt wrong. I'd learned to trust that feeling. The air held something sharp like static before a storm. My fingers tightened around the worn strap of my backpack. Everything I owned condensed into one canvas bag that smelled like damp concrete and broken promises. Most people avoided the old railway bridge. The tracks hadn't seen a working train in years, or so everyone believed. But I knew better. Late-night freight trains still cut through, unscheduled, unannounced. The kind of trains that didn't appear on any official route. I'd made this stretch of forgotten infrastructure my territory. Knew every loose board, every gap in the fence, every shadow that offered shelter. But voices were drifting from the bridge. Muffled. Angry. Wrong. My instincts screamed to turn away, find another spot to sleep, pretend I'd heard nothing. That's what smart people did. Smart people survived by being invisible. I started walking toward the sound anyway. The voices cut off abruptly. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. My footsteps slowed, each placement deliberate, avoiding the loose gravel that would announce my presence. Then I saw him. A man sprawled across the old tracks, arms wrenched behind his back, thick rope cutting into expensive-looking fabric. His legs were bound to the rails themselves, professional knots that spoke of experience. His black shirt was torn at the shoulder, revealing a glimpse of ink, tattoos that looked deliberate, meaningful. He wasn't moving, but his chest rose and fell. Conscious. Where? His jaw was set in a way that suggested fury over fear, like this was an insult rather than a death sentence. Something in my chest tightened. This wasn't random. This was calculated. Someone had left him here to die slowly, to know it was coming, to have time to think about who put him there and why. I should have walked away. Instead I felt it, a faint vibration through the soles of my worn sneakers. My stomach dropped. The rail beneath my foot hummed with approaching weight. Distant but closing. The tremor grew stronger, traveling up through my bones. The train was coming. I didn't think. My body moved before my brain caught up, feet pounding across the distance between us. Knees hit gravel as I skidded beside him, hands already reaching for the ropes. Stay still. The words came out sharp, commanding. Don't move, just don't. His head lifted slightly, dark eyes finding mine. Confusion flickered across features too sharp to be soft, too controlled to be panicked. What? Who are you? No time. My fingers attacked the knots, finding them tight, professional, meant to hold. They tied you too tight. He shifted, testing his bonds, wincing. You shouldn't be involved in this. I already am. I yanked harder at the rope, frustration building. Be quiet. The ground trembled harder now. Not just a vibration anymore. A warning. I pulled my pocket knife from my jacket, the small blade catching moonlight. Not much, but it was all I had. His voice dropped low, dangerous despite his position. Leave. Now. I didn't look up, focusing on sawing through the thick fibers. If you want to argue, survive first. The rope on his wrists resisted, then began to fray strand by strand. Too slow. Way too slow. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cold air. The vibration transformed into sound, a deep rumble echoing from inside the tunnel. No headlight visible yet, but the air pressure changed, pushing against us like a warning. The wrist rope finally snapped. I grabbed his arm, pulling. Up. Now. He tried to stand, but his legs were still bound to the rails. His balance wavered, weight tilting forward. I caught him, shoulder under his arm, muscles straining. Your legs, hold still. I dropped back down, blade working frantically at the ankle ropes. The roar from the tunnel grew louder, no longer distant, no longer giving us time to think. One rope. Just one. The fiber split. Not completely, but enough. He kicked free, momentum carrying us both backward. Move. I didn't recognize my own voice. His hand gripped my shoulder, using me for leverage as we stumbled away from the tracks. 3 steps. 4. My ankle twisted on loose gravel, but I didn't fall. Wind hit first, massive, powerful, shoving against us like a physical force. Then light. Blinding. Consuming everything. The train exploded past in a blur of steel and velocity, so close I felt the heat of it, smelled the metallic tang of wheels on rails. The sound obliterated thought. I pressed my hands over my ears, turning my face away. When it finally passed, the silence felt impossible. My chest heaved, lungs burning, hands shaking from adrenaline. Beside me, he stood perfectly still, breathing hard but controlled, eyes fixed on the empty tracks where he'd been lying seconds ago. Neither of us spoke. The night settled back into itself. Crickets resuming their song, distant traffic humming, the city pretending nothing had happened. I found my voice first. "You okay?" He turned to look at me. Really look. Not the way people usually did. Through me, past me, like I was part of the urban furniture they'd learned to ignore. His gaze held weight, intensity, like he was cataloging every detail and filing it somewhere important. "You risked your life." His voice was quieter now, stripped of command. "For a man you don't even know." I shrugged, refusing to meet his eyes, staring instead at my scraped palms. "Didn't need to know you. Just knew you didn't deserve that." He straightened fully now, rolling his shoulders, testing his range of motion. The torn shirt revealed more of those tattoos. Intricate, expensive work. Not prison ink. Something else entirely. When he spoke again, his voice carried something I couldn't quite identify. Respect maybe. Or surprise. "You saved me. That makes you the first person in years I can trust." Trust. The word felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Trust got people hurt. Trust got people killed. Trust was a luxury the streets couldn't afford. But something about the way he said it made me pause. He extended his hand, not reaching down, not offering charity. Horizontal. Equal. "Let me repay what you did tonight." I stared at his palm, noting the calluses, the scarring on his knuckles. Hands that knew violence but held steady now, patient, waiting for my decision. Every survival instinct screamed to refuse, to disappear back into the shadows where I belonged, to pretend this never happened. My hand moved anyway, fingers closing around his. His grip was warm, firm, certain. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mira." He nodded slowly, like he was committing it to memory, adding it to some internal list. "Luciano." The name meant nothing to me then. Just syllables, foreign and formal, belonging to a world I'd never touched. I didn't know it yet, but those syllables would reshape everything. Luciano didn't let go of my hand immediately. His thumb brushed across my scraped knuckles, frowning at the blood I hadn't noticed. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Not arguing. Stating fact. "Come with me." Every alarm in my head went off simultaneously. Strange man. Empty railway. Middle of the night. This was how people disappeared. But he'd just been tied to train tracks. Someone had tried to kill him. Which meant going with him might be dangerous, but staying here, where whoever did this might return, felt worse. "Where?" I asked, pulling my hand back, needing space to think. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can clean those cuts and give you what you're owed." "I don't want money." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Everyone wants money. I want to know who tied you to those tracks." Silence stretched between us. His expression shifted, calculations happening behind dark eyes. Deciding how much to tell me. Whether I could be trusted with truth. "People who made a mistake," he finally said. "One they won't make twice." The certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. Not fear exactly. Recognition. I'd heard that tone before in back alleys and drug dens, from men who understood violence as currency. "You're going after them. They came after me first." He adjusted his torn collar, calm returning like putting on a coat. "But that's my problem, not yours. You saved my life. Let me at least make sure yours isn't in danger because of it." I hadn't considered that. That helping him might have painted a target on my back. That whoever left him here might have seen me, might come looking, might decide I was a loose end. My backpack suddenly felt heavier. Just for tonight, I heard myself say. Just until morning. Luciano's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile but close. Just until morning. He led the way through the railway yard, moving with purpose despite his ordeal. No stumbling, no hesitation. Like he knew exactly where he was going even though we were in the middle of nowhere. A black car waited 3 blocks away, idling in the shadow of a closed warehouse. Expensive. The kind of vehicle that didn't belong in this neighborhood, that would normally get stripped for parts before dawn. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Older, maybe 50, built like a wall, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I'd seen in my entire life. His eyes swept over me, expression neutral, then shifted to Luciano. Boss. Just one word. Relief and fury mixed together. I'm fine, Marco. Luciano gestured toward me. She needs medical attention. And safety. Marco's gaze returned to me, reassessing. His jaw worked like he wanted to argue but knew better. Yes, boss. The back door opened. Leather interior, immaculate, smelling like money and power. I hesitated at the threshold, one foot on the curb, one hand gripping my backpack strap. This was the moment. Get in the car, step into something unknown. Or walk away, return to the familiar hell of street corners and cold nights. Luciano waited, not pushing, giving me the choice. I got in. The door closed with a solid, expensive thunk. Marco slid back into the driver's seat and the car pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent. Inside, Luciano opened a panel I hadn't noticed, revealing a first aid kit, bottled water and a folded blanket. He handed me the water first. Drink. Then let me see your hands. I twisted the cap off, suspicious of charity but too thirsty to refuse. The water was cold, clean, tasting like it came from somewhere that actually filtered things properly. I drained half the bottle before lowering it. Luciano had already pulled out antiseptic wipes and bandages. He reached for my hand again, gentler this time, turning my palm up to examine the scrapes. This is going to sting. It did. I bit the inside of my cheek, refusing to flinch as he cleaned the wounds with methodical precision. His movements were practiced, confident. Not the first time he'd treated injuries. You do this often? I asked. Get tied to train tracks? First time for everything. A hint of dark humor colored his voice. Usually I'm more careful. What happened? He finished with one hand, started on the other. Business disagreement. That's one way to put attempted murder. His eyes flicked up to meet mine. What would you call it? A message. Smart. He applied a bandage, smoothing the edges carefully. They wanted me to know they could reach me. That I'm not untouchable. Are you? Untouchable. Luciano leaned back, studying me with that same intense focus. I was. Until tonight. The car glided through empty streets, leaving the industrial wasteland behind, heading toward parts of the city I recognized only from passing through, neighborhoods with working streetlights and buildings that didn't look one strong wind from collapse. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere you can rest. Somewhere no one will look for you. Your place. My place. I should have been terrified. Every rational thought said this was insane. But exhaustion had weight, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than the constant vigilance that kept me alive. I felt almost safe. The car turned onto a tree-lined street. Actual trees. Maintained landscaping. Houses set back from the road, each one larger than the last, until we stopped in front of iron gates that opened silently at our approach. The estate beyond looked like something from a movie. Stone facade, arched windows, manicured gardens visible even in the darkness. Not a mansion exactly, but substantial. The kind of place that announced wealth without screaming it. Marco parked near a side entrance. Luciano opened his door, then waited for me to exit on my side. Not pulling me out, not hovering. Letting me choose the pace. The night air smelled different here. Jasmine and fresh-cut grass instead of exhaust and garbage. My worn sneakers felt obscene against the pristine driveway. This way. Luciano headed toward the door. Inside, the house continued the theme. Understated but unmistakably expensive. Hardwood floors that gleamed. Art on the walls that looked original. Furniture that probably had names and pedigrees. I stood in the entryway, suddenly aware of how I must look. Dirty clothes, tangled hair, probably smelling like I'd been sleeping under bridges because I had been. Second floor, third door on the left, Luciano said, voice gentler. Private bathroom. Take as long as you need. There's clothes in the closet, help yourself. I blinked at him. Whose clothes? Guest room. Various sizes. Find something that fits. Why do you have a guest room stocked like a hotel? Something passed across his face, too quick to read. People need sanctuary sometimes. I provide it. Before I could process that, he continued. I'll have Marco arrange breakfast. What do you eat? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. When was the last time someone asked what I wanted to eat instead of what I could find? Anything, I managed. Everything. Food. His mouth curved again, warmer this time. Everything. Got it. He pointed toward the stairs, then disappeared deeper into the house, leaving me standing alone in an entryway that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime if my life had been normal. I climbed the stairs slowly, hand trailing along the polished banister, each step taking me further from the world I knew. The second floor hallway stretched long and quiet. Third door on the left. The guest room was bigger than any apartment I'd ever hoped to afford. King bed with actual pillows. Multiple pillows like people really live this way. Dresser. Nightstand. Windows with curtains that looked clean. The bathroom was pristine. White tile, gleaming fixtures, towels that felt thick and soft. I caught sight of myself in the mirror and flinched. Hollow eyes. Dirt-smudged cheeks. Hair I couldn't remember last washing properly. This wasn't me. This was what survival had made me. I stripped off my clothes, stuffing them in the trash. No salvaging fabric that threadbare. The shower had actual water pressure. Hot water. I stood under the spray until my skin turned red, scrubbing away layers of street grime and something heavier I couldn't name. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that probably cost more than my backpack, the closet revealed exactly what Luciano promised. Clothing in various sizes, still tagged, never worn. I found jeans that almost fit, a soft gray sweater, clean underwear and socks. Getting dressed in clothes that didn't smell like defeat felt surreal. I returned downstairs following the scent of coffee. Real coffee, not the burnt convenience store swill I occasionally begged enough change to afford. The kitchen was massive but somehow felt warm. Luciano sat at an island counter, shirt changed, hair damp, looking significantly less like someone who'd nearly died an hour ago. Marco stood near the stove, cooking. Cooking. The sight was so incongruous. This wall of a man in an expensive suit wielding a spatula. I stopped in the doorway. Luciano noticed me first. His gaze swept over me, expression unreadable, then nodded toward an empty seat. Coffee. Please. He poured from a French press. Of course he had a French press, and slid a mug across the counter. No asking how I took it. Just strong and black because that's what he was drinking and somehow it felt right. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, inhaling deeply. This is insane. Which part? Luciano asked. All of it. This house. That you're acting like I didn't just pull you off train tracks. Would you prefer I act traumatized? I'd prefer you explain why someone tried to kill you. Marco turned from the stove, spatula raised like a weapon. Boss doesn't owe explanations to. Marco. One word. Quiet. Absolute. The older man's jaw snapped shut. He returned to cooking, radiating disapproval. Luciano sipped his coffee, considering. How much do you know about this city's real structure? I know there's the version tourists see and the version people like me live in. There's a third version. The one that actually runs things. He set down his mug. Legitimate businesses with less legitimate foundations. Power held by families whose names don't appear in Forbes but whose influence touches everything. You're talking about organized crime. I'm talking about order. The kind that prevents chaos. The kind that keeps neighborhoods safe when the police don't care enough to try. I wanted to argue. Wanted to point out the hypocrisy, the victims, the reality behind his sanitized description. But I'd lived on the streets long enough to know the police didn't protect people like me. That sometimes the monsters you knew were safer than the ones wearing badges. And someone wants your order gone, I said instead. Someone wants what I've built. They're willing to kill for it. He leaned forward, elbows on counter. Which means anyone associated with me becomes a target. Including you. The words hit like cold water. I'm not associated with you. I just helped. You were seen. They'll wonder who you are, why you interfered, whether I sent you as a counter-move. His voice stayed calm, factual. By sunrise, your face will be circulating. By noon, someone will come looking. My fingers tightened on the mug. So what? You lock me in this house. Make me a prisoner for saving your life. I protect you. No hesitation. Until the threat is eliminated. Then you're free to leave with enough money to start over somewhere safe. I don't want your money. You need it whether you want it or not. Marco set a plate in front of me. Eggs, toast, bacon, fruit that looked fresh. Actual breakfast. My stomach clenched with hunger I'd been ignoring for days. Luciano watched me stare at the food. Eat. We'll figure out the rest after. I picked up the fork, then paused. What if I leave now? Walk out, disappear, do what I've always done. They'll find you. And when they do, they won't ask questions first. How do you know? His expression hardened into something cold and final. Because it's what I would do. The honesty was worse than any threat. No false comfort, no reassuring lies. Just the brutal truth delivered by someone who understood violence from the inside. I ate. Because I was starving. Because I was tired. Because somewhere under the fear and confusion I believed him. Marco left after breakfast, disappearing with a meaningful look at Luciano that I couldn't decipher. The house settled into quiet, not uncomfortable, just present. Like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what happened next. Luciano showed me the rest of the first floor. Library with actual books, not decorative spines but worn covers suggesting someone read them. Office with a desk clear of everything except a laptop and single photo frame facing away from me. Living room with furniture that looked comfortable rather than showpiece perfect. You can go anywhere on this floor, he explained. Second floor, your room and the bathroom are yours. Third floor is off limits. Why? Because I need one space that's still mine. Fair enough. We ended in the library. Luciano pulled a book from the shelf. Something old, leather-bound, pages yellowed with age. He handed it to me without explanation. I opened it carefully. Poetry. In Italian. Beautiful script flowing across each page. My grandmother's, he said quietly. She believed words had power. That reading made you understand hearts better than any conversation. I don't read Italian. Learn it while you're here. Something to do besides worry. I looked up at him, this strange man who killed people for a living but kept his grandmother's poetry and rescued homeless women without asking for anything in return. Why are you being kind to me? Luciano took the book back, returning it to its precise spot on the shelf. Because you were kind to me first. And kindness is rare enough to be repaid. He left me alone in the library. I spent the afternoon reading, English books this time, fiction that let me escape into other lives, other problems, other worlds where train tracks and mafia bosses existed only as plot devices rather than reality. Evening came soft and gold, light slanting through windows I didn't have to worry about being seen through. Marco returned with groceries, cooking dinner with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown at breakfast. We ate at the kitchen island again. Chicken, vegetables, bread that tasted handmade. Luciano asked questions that felt genuine rather than interrogative. Where was I from originally? How long had I been on the streets? Did I have family? I answered more honestly than I'd planned. Small town girl who left home at 16 to escape a stepfather whose hands wandered. Thought the city would offer opportunity. Found only exploitation. Lost jobs turned into lost apartments, turned into lost hope until the streets became the only constant. He listened without judgment, without pity, without the usual responses people gave when they bothered to ask at all. When I finished, he simply said, "You survived. That takes strength most people don't have." Something in my chest loosened. After dinner, Luciano disappeared upstairs. I heard footsteps above, pacing, then silence. Eventually I returned to the guest room, exhausted despite having done nothing all day except exist somewhere safe. The bed felt impossible. Too soft. Too clean. Too much like something I didn't deserve. I lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, wondering who I'd become. This morning I'd been Mira the homeless girl. Tonight I was Mira the house guest in a mafia boss's estate. Tomorrow I'd be Mira the target. None of it felt real. Sleep came anyway, heavy and deep, the kind of rest that only happens when your body finally believes it's safe enough to let go. I woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a moment I forgot where I was, panic spiking until memory returned. Right. The house. Luciano. Safety. Downstairs Marco was cooking again. Did the man ever stop? Luciano sat at the counter, laptop open, expression serious. He looked up when I entered. Morning. Sleep well. Better than I have in months. I poured coffee, the routine already feeling familiar. What now? How we wait. He closed the laptop. My people are tracking who hired last night's attempted farewell. Once we know, we handle it. Handle it how? However necessary. The casual violence in his tone should have frightened me. Instead it felt almost reassuring. Someone finally protecting me instead of the other way around. How long will waiting take? Days. Maybe a week. He studied me over his mug. Can you be patient? I thought about cold nights under bridges, about constantly looking over my shoulder, about hunger and fear and exhaustion that never ended. I can be patient, I said. What I didn't say, I could get used to this. To safety. To warmth. To someone who looked at me like I mattered. That was the dangerous part. Not the men who wanted Luciano dead. The part where I started wanting to stay. 3 days passed in a strange suspension of normal life. Marco came and went, bringing groceries and news I wasn't privy to. Luciano spent hours in his office or on phone calls conducted in rapid Italian that sounded equal parts business and threat. I existed in the spaces between, reading books I'd never had time for, taking showers I didn't have to ration, eating meals that arrived like clockwork. But I wasn't a prisoner despite my initial fear. Luciano gave me space, asked permission before entering rooms, treated me like a guest rather than property. On the 4th morning he knocked on my door before dawn. Get dressed. We're going somewhere. I pulled on jeans and the gray sweater, ran fingers through hair that was finally starting to feel clean instead of just less dirty. Downstairs, Luciano waited in dark clothes, jacket covering something I suspected was a weapon. Where? I asked. Somewhere important to me. I want you to see it. The car, Marco driving again, took us east toward the industrial district where gentrification hadn't reached. We stopped in front of a building that might have been a warehouse once. Now it wore fresh paint and a sign, St. Catherine's Community Center. Inside, the early hour didn't mean emptiness. A dozen people moved through the space. Volunteers setting up tables, arranging chairs, unpacking boxes of food. A woman approached, older, wearing a crucifix and tired smile. Luciano. We weren't expecting you this morning. Impromptu visit, Sister Teresa. He gestured toward me. This is Mira. I wanted to show her the center. Sister Teresa's gaze swept over me, seeing everything I'd been, maybe everything I could be. Her smile warmed. Welcome. We're setting up for breakfast service. 600 people will come through those doors today. I blinked. 600. Homeless, working poor families, one paycheck from disaster. She touched my arm gently. People like you, maybe. Luciano spent the next hour moving through the center like he belonged there. Not as a boss or benefactor, but as someone who understood what these walls meant. He helped arrange tables, carried boxes too heavy for the older volunteers, spoke to people by name. I watched him lift a crate of canned goods, biceps flexing under his jacket, and something shifted in my chest. This was the same man who'd been tied to train tracks. The same man whose enemies feared him enough to attempt murder. But here, surrounded by people society forgot, he was just present. Sister Teresa appeared beside me. He started this place 7 years ago. After his sister died. I turned to her. His sister. Overdose. She'd been homeless for 2 years before it happened. Her voice carried old grief. Luciano blamed himself for not finding her sooner. This is his penance. My throat tightened. Does he come often? Every week. Sometimes more. She smiled softly. He thinks no one knows who funds the renovations, the supplies, the staff salaries. But we know. Some angels wear expensive suits. I didn't know what to say to that. The man I was seeing didn't match the man I'd assumed. Criminals didn't build community centers. Killers didn't remember volunteers' names. Unless they did. Unless people were more complicated than the boxes society put them in. Luciano caught my eye across the room and something passed between us. An understanding, maybe. A recognition that we both knew what it meant to survive in margins. When breakfast service started, I helped. Pouring coffee, handing out plates, offering smiles to people whose eyes held the same exhaustion mine had carried days ago. Some looked at me with suspicion, recognizing one of their own playing dress-up. Others were just grateful for the food. A woman about my age approached the table, holding a toddler on her hip. The child's face was clean, but her clothes were worn thin. The mother's eyes were ancient. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the plate. "You're welcome." The words felt inadequate. She hesitated, then leaned closer. "You're new here." "First time. It gets easier. Being inside again. Eventually you remember how." She moved to a table before I could respond, settling her daughter into a chair, breaking bread into small pieces the little girl could manage. That could have been me. If I'd stayed on the streets another year, another winter. That hollow look, that bone-deep weariness. That child who deserved better but got whatever her mother could scrape together. Luciano appeared at my elbow. "You okay?" "Just thinking. About how close I was to never leaving those streets." His hand found the small of my back. Brief grounding. "But you did leave. That matters. Because you gave me a way out. Because you were brave enough to take it." His voice dropped lower. "Not everyone would have gotten in that car. Maybe I was just too tired to say no. Or maybe you recognize someone who understands what survival costs." We worked until the last person was fed, until Sister Teresa shooed us out with gratitude and instructions to rest. The drive back was quiet, both of us processing what the morning had shown. Back at the house, Luciano made espresso, proper Italian espresso, thick and strong. We sat in the library, afternoon sun painting everything gold. "Your sister," I started carefully. "Sister Teresa told me." His expression closed slightly, but he didn't shut down. "Catalina. She was younger, smarter, should have had everything." He stared into his cup. "Our family life wasn't easy. She ran at 15. I was already in deep with my uncle's organization, thought I could protect her from a distance. But you couldn't. I found her 2 days after she died. In an alley 3 blocks from one of my own warehouses." His jaw tightened. "I'd walked past that alley 100 times. She was that close and I never knew." "That's not your fault. Isn't it?" He finally looked at me. "I chose this life. Chose power and money and influence. And while I was building an empire, my sister was dying alone." I set down my cup, moving closer. She made her choices too. Running, using, not reaching out. You can't carry all of that. Someone has to. So you built the center. Feed hundreds of people. Try to save everyone you couldn't save then. Does that make me noble or selfish? I thought about it honestly. Both. And human. Something in his face softened. "You don't judge me. For trying to help people?" "No. For how I afford to help them." But there was the real question under everything. Could I accept the man knowing what he did? Could I separate the violence from the kindness? "I don't know your world," I said slowly. "Don't understand the rules or the reasons. But I know you saved me when you didn't have to. Know you feed people who need it. Know you kept your grandmother's poetry and mourn your sister and treat me like I'm worth something. You are worth something. To you maybe. Not to the world that forgot me." Luciano reached out, thumb brushing my cheek so gentle it made my breath catch. "Then the world's an idiot." We sat like that, his hand on my face, afternoon stretching into evening, neither of us pulling away. Until Marco appeared in the doorway, expression grim. "Boss. We found them." Luciano's hand dropped. His entire demeanor shifted, softness replaced by steel. "Where?" "East Docks. The Zanetti crew. They're preparing to move against your holdings tomorrow night." "How many?" 15 confirmed. Possibly more. I watched Luciano transform before my eyes. The man who volunteered at community centers disappeared. In his place stood someone calculating, dangerous, capable of whatever came next. "Call the family. Emergency meeting. 1 hour." He stood, already moving toward the door, then paused. Turned back to me. "Stay here. Marco will remain with you." "What are you going to do?" "What's necessary." No apology. No softening. Just truth. "Luciano. I'll be back before morning. I promise." He left before I could argue. Marco stayed in the doorway, solid and watchful. "He'll be safe." "Will he?" "The boss always comes back." That wasn't the reassurance he thought it was. I spent the evening pacing, reading the same page 12 times, drinking coffee I didn't need. Marco ordered takeout I couldn't eat. Every car sound outside made my heart jump. This was his life. Violence and strategy and enemies who tied people to train tracks. This was what I'd stepped into when I'd pulled him to safety. Near midnight I heard the front door. Luciano's voice, low and tired. Marco's response. Footsteps on stairs. I met him in the hallway outside my room. He looked exhausted but unharmed. His jacket was gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing those tattoos fully for the first time. Intricate, meaningful, beautiful. "It's handled," he said simply. "What does that mean?" "It means the threat is eliminated. Permanently." I should have pressed for details. Should have demanded to know what eliminated actually meant. But part of me already knew and couldn't bear hearing it confirmed. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Are you okay?" He considered that. "I'm alive. That's what matters." "That's not the same thing." "In my world it is." He leaned against the wall, suddenly looking less invincible. "I'm sorry you had to worry. I'm sorry you had to do whatever you did. Don't be sorry for me surviving." "I'm not. I'm sorry that's what survival requires." Luciano pushed off the wall, closing the distance between us. His hand found my waist, pulling me closer, not demanding, asking. I went, letting my forehead rest against his shoulder, feeling his heart beat steady and strong. "Thank you," he whispered against my hair, "for caring whether I came back." "Where else would you go?" "Nowhere. Not anymore." We stood like that until our breathing synced, until the adrenaline faded, until Marco's careful cough from downstairs reminded us we weren't alone. Luciano pulled back slightly, thumb tracing my jawline. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." "What does come next?" His eyes held mine, dark, intense, impossible to read. "Whatever you want. You're safe now. Free to leave whenever you choose." But I didn't want to leave. That was the terrifying part. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He kissed my forehead, brief, gentle, then disappeared into his own room, door closing with soft finality. I returned to bed, thoughts racing. A week ago I'd been sleeping under bridges. Now I was falling for a man who killed for a living and saved people for penance. Nothing about this made sense. Everything about it felt inevitable. Sleep came eventually, restless and full of dreams I wouldn't remember. But when morning came, I woke to sunlight and coffee smells and the strange, terrifying realization that I wanted to stay. Not because I needed safety. Because I was starting to need him. And that was more dangerous than any threat. The story continues in part 2. But before we get there, I need to know something. Where are you experiencing this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. Let me know you're out there, that these words found you wherever you are in the world. And if you're not subscribed yet, here's the thing. Part 2 changes everything. The danger escalates. The connection deepens. And decisions get made that can't be unmade. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Mira realizes she's not just staying for safety anymore. When Luciano's enemies discover his one vulnerability. When protection becomes something more complicated than either of them planned. Comment below where you're from. I'll see you in part 2.